Sometime around the start of my first year of high school, I wasn't really paying attention to Digimon anymore. That's probably how it was with a lot of American kids at the time. While having your interest change and fluctuate as you get older is nothing out of the ordinary, the Digimon brand outside of Japan had also just stagnated, since Digimon Frontier had finished over a year and a half prior, and the show was the primary piece of Digimon media in the West. Despite so many pieces of the Digimon franchise remaining only in Japan, Bandai did decide to risk localizing another well-known brand that had been dormant for over 5 years, Tamagotchi. I remember seeing a commercial for the Tamagotchi Connection, and I was immediately hooked back into my forgotten fascination with virtual pets. Of course, this episode of A Brief History of Digimon V-Pets is not about the Tamagotchi Connection, but it is important to bring it up. Just a few months before I first saw the commercial for the Connection, it had released in Japan in May 2004, and was apparently very successful, and as such, the Tamagotchi series saw new releases almost every single year since. Not all of these released outside Japan, and the Connection series itself continued in a different direction than its originator, but it was clear that there was still a market for virtual pets. Now, if you've been paying attention, 2004 should be of particular note when it comes to the Digimon timeline, as it was the only year since 1997 that saw no Digimon electronic release whatsoever. So it could be that Bandai was focusing that team on the return of Tamagotchi at the time, which, if so, that certainly worked out for them. The success of the Connection may be part of the reason that the Digimon XL was able to happen in the first place, though we can't say that for sure. What I can say for sure though is that the Tamagotchi revival did have an impact on the Digimon brand. The Tamagotchi Connection had much more to offer than the original Tamagotchi releases, and after a few follow-up releases in Japan with the Keitai Kaitsu and the Haneruchi, Bandai chose to really simplify its next release, the Tamagotchi Mini. When I say simplify, I mean it, as just about everything but the bare minimum was stripped from this device. As you would expect, the connection features were removed, but so were the games, discipline, and even most of the menus. You could feed your Tamagotchi, and if it had poop on the screen, then that same button to bring up the feeding options would automatically clean the poop, heal sicknesses, and bring up the lights. Evolution was also very watered down, with the baby form evolving straight into one of 4 possible adults and 2 special characters. Personally, I find this to be pretty much the worst Tamagotchi ever made, as while it functions fine enough, it's just incredibly boring to use. Even frustrating releases like the Ocean at least encouraged me to put in effort. I didn't get one of these when they first released, but I did pick one up when they were being marketed as a 20th anniversary release. Despite everything, I guess they are at least cute keychains, so they have that going for them. While I'm not a big fan of them, I guess others must have been, because Bandai decided to give Digimon the exact same treatment with the Digimon Mini. Initially released in November of 2005, the Mini was a complete return to form, harkening back to the original Digital Monster series. Like the Tamagotchi Mini, it was a very stripped-down pet compared to the previous Digimon V-Pet release, the XL. The size is obviously one of the biggest differences, as this is absolutely the smallest Digimon V-Pet there is, though not quite as small as the Tamagotchi Mini. The standard 3 buttons are back, along with the reset button, and up top we see the same 3-prong connector that the Pendulum X and XL use. The keychain is now a simple ball chain rather than using the clip from older Digimon releases, and around back we see the battery door is now screwless, allowing you to simply press a small button to access the battery chamber. Taking a look at the screen, it has a slightly higher resolution than the Tamagotchi Mini. While both minis were 16 pixels tall, the Digimon Mini was 8 pixels wider at 24 pixels across, which is also only 8 pixels narrower than the original Digital Monster. This meant that the sprites still had some room to move around in. For the most part, the sprites used are pulled straight from the Digital Monster and Digimon Pendulum series, though Kabuterimon has been changed to make it incredibly confusing to know at a glance whether you have Kabuterimon or Atler Kabuterimon, as they share more similarities than before. Koromon has also been updated to be based on its Digimon World sprite, and has lost its ability to fly. While it's perfectly normal for Tamagotchi characters to float around the screen, Digimon generally reserves that for flying or swimming monsters, but Koromon on the version 1 had always been an anomaly. On to mechanics, there's really not a lot to say. As a first for a Digimon release, there are no new features whatsoever, as this is meant to be a more simplified experience. Thankfully though, it's not quite as bare bones as the Tamagotchi Mini, and still manages to include almost everything from the original Digital Monster. There is no stats menu this time around, so you don't have any way to know what your Digimon needs beyond just feeding it until it gets full. Pressing the A button when it has no needs will bring up that menu, so you can give it food to prevent hunger care mistakes or pills to strengthen it. There's no need to worry about regularly giving it pills though, as the Digimon in the Mini don't require strength to stay healthy. If your Digimon has pooped, gets sick, or needs to go to sleep, pressing the A button will change to take care of those needs rather than opening up the food menu. The B button brings up your battle menu so you can fight with other 3-pronged devices using the Pendulum X battle system. Since there's no pendulum or acceleration trigger to use, you simply press the B button to reach a specific count, which will determine the types of shots you do. You can also view your battle record, which, as always, is handy for keeping track of your progress for higher evolutions. If you hold the B button instead of just pressing it, this will start a training session, which you can do to increase your strength instead of using pills. The C button will do nothing on its own, but holding it will display the clock. Strangely, while the combination for muting the device and changing the clock is usually A and C, the Mini uses A and B to do this instead. And that's really it as far as gameplay goes, so let's talk about its releases. In total, there were 3 versions that came out between 2005 and 2006. And while each version had a few color choices like normal, the first version also had a special Uniqlo collection, featuring more stylish designs than the simple colors seen on the other options. Roster-wise, the Mini was more of a retro callback than a true new step for V-Pets, so no new Digimon were introduced. About 59% of the Digimon featured, including all the adult-level Digimon, came from the Digital Monster series, while 34%, including all perfect-level Digimon, come from the Digimon Pendulum series. The remaining 7% is composed of just 3 Digimon, including Bancho-Leomon and Tyrant Kabuterimon from the XL, and Lucemon Satan Mode from Digimon Frontier, who all received new sprites so they could fit on the smaller screen. While the rosters may have been populated mostly by older Digimon, they weren't exact recreations of any one device. Version 1 starts off looking like that, since Agumon and Betamon are featured, but Gabumon has been thrown in as well, and that's just where the differences begin. All 3 versions included Ultimate and Super Ultimate Digimon, unlike the original Digital Monster, and the third version had 5 more Digimon than the other 2, including 2 more adults, 1 more perfect, and 2 more ultimates, which honestly makes it feel like a more complete device than the other 2. Versions 1 and 2 also only allowed 1 of its 2 perfect level Digimon to evolve further, while all 3 perfects could evolve on the version 3. The Mini is about as basic as a Digimon V-Pet can be, and as such, I don't have a lot to share when it comes to what I think. It's a perfectly adequate device, and it's impressively small, but there's nothing going for it that I can't get from any other V-Pet. The version you have also changes your experience. If you have a version 1, then you have to deal with having a smaller chance to evolve into perfect and ultimate, though you do have more choices when it comes to the shell, including some really unique designs. The version 2, meanwhile, has my favorite roster between the 3, but it misses out on having the same amount of content as the version 3. One thing that can be a big benefit though is that the Mini is very difficult to kill and requires very minimal care, making it a great pet for when you just want an easygoing raising experience. For me though, I'm always going to grab the original Digital Monster before the Digimon Mini. While the Digimon Mini didn't bring anything new to the table, it was nonetheless a neat release to see. Honestly, it would have been neat even if it was the only device released that year, but instead it released alongside other, more complex Digimon V-Pets, giving fans at the time multiple device families to choose from. The Mini idea would later be revisited in a future release, but there's still a few more devices to talk about before that point, including what can be considered a sequel to the Digimon XL. In the meantime, please consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell to stay notified whenever I upload. Until next time, bye!